Some people say you never really know the person sleeping next to you. I used to laugh at that saying. Now I understand it better than I ever wanted to. The rain was hammering against my office window that Tuesday afternoon when I decided to surprise my wife with lunch. 6 years of marriage, and I still got excited about these little spontaneous moments. I grabbed 2 sandwiches from her favorite deli and headed toward her photography studio in downtown Newark. Traffic was terrible, but I didn't mind. I was thinking about how proud I was of Veronica and everything she'd built with her business. My name is Walt, and I've spent the last decade building my consulting firm from the ground up. The work is demanding, the hours brutal, but it gave us a comfortable life. Not extravagant, but comfortable, solid middle-class stability in a city where that's increasingly hard to maintain. Veronica had always been passionate about photography, even back when we first started dating 7 years ago. She'd shown me her portfolio on our 3rd date, and I was genuinely impressed by her talent for capturing emotion in still images. When she opened her studio 3 years ago, I supported her completely. I helped her scout locations, reviewed business plans with her, even helped paint the walls of the space she'd leased in downtown Newark. She specialized in portrait photography, families, professionals, artists who wanted quality headshots. Business was booming, or at least that's what she told me. I had no reason to doubt her. The studio was her dream, and I loved seeing her excited about something she'd built herself. She'd talk for hours about different lighting techniques, about difficult clients she'd won over, about the artistic vision she was developing. I'd listen, not always understanding the technical details, but loving how passionate she became when discussing her work. That Tuesday started like any other. I'd been up since 6, reviewing quarterly reports and preparing for an afternoon conference call. My consulting business focuses on helping mid-sized companies optimize their operations, and we just landed a significant new client that required extra attention. The work was consuming, but I never let it interfere with my marriage. At least, I thought I didn't. Around noon, I realized I hadn't heard from Veronica all morning. Usually we'd exchange a few texts throughout the day, nothing major, just small check-ins. The silence felt odd, though I couldn't articulate why. On impulse, I decided to surprise her with lunch from Romano's, the Italian deli 3 blocks from her studio that made her favorite roasted vegetable sandwich. I remember the drive clearly. The rain had turned Newark streets into rivers, and I had to navigate around several flooded intersections. The weather matched my mood in a way I didn't recognize at the time. Dark, turbulent, with an undercurrent of something ominous I couldn't quite identify. I parked across the street from the studio, noticing the session in progress sign wasn't up. Perfect timing. Her car was in its usual spot, and through the rain-streaked window, I could see lights on in the main studio space. I grabbed the bag of sandwiches and jogged through the downpour to the front entrance. The front door was unlocked, which was strange since she usually kept it secure during the day. Newark wasn't dangerous, exactly, but it wasn't the kind of neighborhood where you left your business unlocked. I walked through the reception area, calling out her name. No answer. The reception area reflected Veronica's aesthetic, minimalist, modern, with black and white photographs lining the walls. I recognized some of them from our early days together, photos she'd taken before the business existed, when photography was just a passionate hobby. I'd always been proud that she'd turned that passion into something profitable. I noticed her jacket hanging on the coat rack, her purse visible through the open door of her small office. She was definitely here. Maybe she had headphones on while editing, which would explain why she hadn't heard me call her name. The main studio was at the back, behind a heavy soundproof door she'd installed to prevent outside noise from interfering with sessions. I pushed it open quietly, not wanting to startle her if she was reviewing photos or setting up equipment. What I saw made my stomach drop. Veronica was wrapped in the arms of a man I'd never seen before, their embrace intimate and familiar. They weren't kissing, but the way they held each other told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a friendly hug between colleagues celebrating a successful shoot. This was something else entirely. His hands were on her waist, her arms around his neck, their bodies pressed together in a way that spoke of comfort and routine. Time seemed to slow down. My mind was trying to process what I was seeing, trying to find an innocent explanation even as my gut screamed the truth. They pulled apart when they heard the door, and the look on her face, guilt mixed with panic mixed with something else I couldn't identify, confirmed my worst suspicions. "Walt," she stammered, taking a step back from the man. "I wasn't expecting you." The man stepped back too, running a hand through his hair awkwardly. He was younger than me, probably late 20s, with that artistic, disheveled look that photographers often cultivate. Wearing dark jeans and a vintage band t-shirt, expensive-looking camera equipment hanging from straps around his neck. He looked exactly like the type of person who would work in Veronica's studio, which somehow made everything worse. "I can see that," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos erupting in my chest. The bag of sandwiches felt heavy in my hand, a ridiculous prop in this terrible scene. "Who's this?" "This is Roger. He's our new photographer." I was just what, Veronica? The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear rain drumming against the building's roof, the hum of the studio lights, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Roger grabbed his camera bag and muttered something about giving us privacy before practically running out the back exit. I didn't try to stop him. This was between me and my wife. Veronica tried to explain, her words tumbling over each other in a desperate attempt to minimize what I'd witnessed. She claimed they were just celebrating landing a big client, that I was misunderstanding the situation, that nothing inappropriate was happening. She'd hired Roger 3 weeks ago, she said, after months of searching for someone talented enough to handle the studio's growing workload. He specialized in private sessions, boudoir photography, intimate portraits, the kind of work that required sensitivity and artistic vision. "We were just excited about booking the Henderson wedding," she insisted, her voice rising with false brightness. "It's a huge contract, Walt. We were just celebrating." But I knew. Deep in my gut, I knew. The way she wouldn't meet my eyes. The slight tremor in her voice. How she kept adjusting her shirt, smoothing her hair, unconscious tells of someone who'd just been caught. I'd been married to this woman for 6 years, and I could read her better than she realized. "How long has he been working here?" I asked, my voice still eerily calm. 3 weeks. "I told you about hiring someone new." Had she? I tried to remember, searching through recent conversations, but everything felt blurry suddenly. Maybe she had mentioned it. Maybe I hadn't been paying attention, too focused on my own work, my own projects. Or maybe she deliberately kept it vague, giving herself plausible deniability. "And you didn't think to introduce us? Invite him to dinner, maybe, so I could meet this person you're spending so much time with." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't think you'd be interested. You're always so busy with your own clients." The accusation in her tone stung, probably because there was truth in it. I had been busy, consumed with work, with building my business, with providing the comfortable life we enjoyed. But was that a justification for whatever this was? I set the bag of sandwiches down on a light stand, suddenly unable to hold it anymore. "I think I need some air. Walt, please don't leave like this." Nothing happened. I swear nothing happened. But something had happened. Even if it hadn't become physical yet, though I suspected it had, something had definitely happened. An emotional connection, an attraction, a betrayal of the trust that marriage requires. I walked out without another word, leaving her standing there in her studio, surrounded by all the equipment I'd helped her acquire, in the space I'd helped her build, with the evidence of her deception hanging in the air between us. That night, she came home late. She swore it was nothing. She said Roger was just a colleague, that I was being paranoid, that 6 years of marriage should count for something. She cried, she pleaded, she made promises. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. We sat at our kitchen table in the apartment we'd shared for 4 years, Bailey lying at my feet, and she spun her story. How I'd misinterpreted what I saw. How stress from the business had been making her emotional, and she'd needed support. How Roger was just a good listener, a colleague who understood the pressures of creative work. How I was always so busy with my own career that she sometimes felt lonely, abandoned, but that didn't mean she'd ever do anything to hurt our marriage. Part of me wanted to accept her explanations, to push down the doubt and go back to how things were. But another part of me, a part I'd never really accessed before, kept replaying that scene in the studio. The way they'd held each other. The panic in her eyes when she saw me. How quickly Roger had fled. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Veronica in our bed, listening to her breathing, wondering who she really was. Wondering if I'd ever really known her at all. But something had shifted in me that day. I started noticing little things I'd overlooked before. How she'd angle her phone away from me when texting. The way she'd suddenly have evening shoots that ran late into the night. How our golden retriever, Bailey, would bark excitedly whenever she came home smelling like unfamiliar cologne. I tried to push these thoughts away, tried to convince myself I was being irrational. But the doubt had planted itself in my mind, growing roots that dug deeper every day. 2 weeks later, I made a decision that would change everything. I'd always handled our finances, and I decided to review our credit card statements more carefully. What I found made my blood run cold. Hotel charges in Newark, restaurants I'd never been to, purchases at stores that didn't match anything in our home. The timeline stretched back months, maybe longer. I needed to know the truth, but I couldn't confront her with just suspicions and credit card bills. I needed concrete evidence. Through a business associate, I got the contact information for a private investigator. I'll admit, it felt wrong at first, hiring someone to follow my own wife. But what felt more wrong was living with this gnawing uncertainty, this constant questioning of every word she said, every explanation she gave. The investigator was discreet and professional. I gave him photos of Veronica and Roger, the studio address, and our home address. Then I waited. The next 3 weeks were torture. I went through the motions of normal life, working, coming home, having dinner with Veronica, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was dying a little more each day. Veronica seemed more relaxed after our initial confrontation, probably thinking she'd convinced me that nothing was wrong. She even made more effort to be affectionate, which somehow made everything worse. Then the investigator called. We met at a coffee shop far from our neighborhood. He slid a thick envelope across the table, his expression professionally neutral but sympathetic. You're not going to like what's in here, he said quietly. He was right. The photographs documented everything. Veronica and Roger entering hotels together in the middle of the afternoon. Kissing in his car. Meeting at restaurants across Newark and neighboring cities. The timeline he'd constructed showed a pattern that made my stomach turn. But there was more. I did some additional digging like you asked, the investigator said. Roger isn't her first. There were others before him. He showed me evidence of previous affairs, different men, different time frames, but all during our marriage. The investigator had found old emails, social media messages, hotel records. Veronica had been cheating on me for years, possibly from the very beginning of our marriage. I felt like I was drowning. There's one more thing, he said, his voice gentler now. Your wife visited a medical clinic 2 weeks ago. I couldn't get the records, obviously, but based on the type of clinic and the timing, I think you should know. The implication was clear. I sat there in that coffee shop, surrounded by strangers living their normal lives, while mine crumbled into pieces around me. That night, I couldn't go home. I checked into a hotel and spent hours staring at those photographs, at the evidence of my wife's betrayal spread across the bed. Bailey was with a friend who thought I was on a business trip. The next morning, I went to see a lawyer. The divorce attorney I hired was sharp and experienced. I showed her everything, the photographs, the financial records, the timeline. She listened carefully, taking notes. This is pretty clear-cut, she said. In New Jersey, adultery is grounds for fault-based divorce, though most people opt for the no-fault route these days. Given the evidence you have, we can definitely work with this. I want everything, I said. The apartment, the assets, everything we built together. She nodded. With this level of evidence and the duration of the affairs, we have a strong case. New Jersey courts do consider marital misconduct when dividing assets. Over the next few days, I prepared. I moved money into a separate account. Nothing illegal, just protecting what was mine. I gathered documents, made lists, consulted with financial advisors. Veronica had no idea a storm was coming. I also discovered something else during this process. Veronica had taken out a second mortgage on the studio property without telling me, using money I didn't know about. The investigator helped me trace where that money went, partially to fund her lifestyle with Roger and the others, partially into a separate account she'd been hiding. On a Friday evening, I came home with pizza and wine, acting like nothing was wrong. Veronica seemed happy, probably relieved that I'd apparently moved past my paranoia about Roger. We ate dinner, watched a movie, and she fell asleep on the couch. I stayed up late, making final preparations. Monday morning, I left for work as usual. But instead of going to my office, I went to the lawyer's office. The divorce papers were ready, along with a comprehensive filing that detailed her infidelity with evidence attached. Veronica was served at her studio that afternoon, while she was between sessions. The process server told me later that she'd gone pale when she read the papers, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold them. She called me immediately, her voice frantic. "Walt, what is this? What are you doing?" "I'm doing what I should have done weeks ago," I said calmly. "I'm protecting myself from someone who's been lying to me for years." "Years? Walt, you're being crazy." It was just Roger, and nothing even happened. I have photographs, Veronica. Dates, times, hotel receipts. And not just Roger. All of them. The line went silent. How did you? It doesn't matter how. What matters is that I know the truth now. All of it. She tried different tactics: denial, anger, bargaining, tears. She claimed the affairs meant nothing, that she loved me, that she'd made mistakes but wanted to fix things. When that didn't work, she threatened to fight the divorce, to make things difficult. Go ahead, I told her. But remember, I have evidence that will become part of public record. Every affair, every lie, every hotel room. Is that really what you want? The fight went out of her then. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Veronica's attorney tried to negotiate, but my lawyer was relentless. The evidence was overwhelming, and New Jersey law was on my side. The apartment would be mine, along with the majority of our shared assets. Her studio was hers, but she'd have to deal with that second mortgage alone. During the process, I learned more details I wish I didn't know. The investigator's final report revealed that Veronica had indeed been pregnant, by Roger, presumably, and had terminated it without ever telling me. The clinic visit had been for that procedure. That revelation hurt in a different way. Not because I wanted children with her at this point, but because it represented another massive deception, another layer of betrayal. Veronica tried to reach out several times during those months. She sent long emails, left voicemails, even showed up at my office once. She claimed she wanted to explain, to help me understand. But what was there to understand? She'd made her choices repeatedly for years. I learned through mutual friends that her relationship with Roger fell apart almost immediately after I filed for divorce. Apparently, the reality of their affair becoming public, combined with the pressure of possibly being together openly, was too much. He stopped working at our studio and moved to Philadelphia. The studio itself began struggling. Some of it was the economy, some was the distraction of the divorce, but I suspected some clients had heard rumors and chose to take their business elsewhere. Newark isn't as small as a true small town, but in certain professional circles, word gets around. 6 months after I'd discovered the truth, the divorce was finalized. I kept the apartment, Bailey, and most of our shared investments. Veronica kept her studio and her car, and she was responsible for her own debts. On the day the divorce was final, I took Bailey for a long walk through Branch Brook Park. It was spring, and the cherry blossoms were in bloom. I thought about the last 6 years, about all the moments I'd believed were real but weren't. The anniversaries, the holidays, the quiet Sunday mornings. How much of it had been genuine? How much had been performance? But I also thought about the future. At 38, I was starting over, but I was free. Free from the lies, free from the betrayal, free from the constant wondering and doubting. I threw myself into my business with renewed energy. Without the distraction of a failing marriage, my company actually started growing faster. I took on new clients, expanded into new markets, hired more staff. Work became my therapy. Meanwhile, I heard through various sources that Veronica's life wasn't going well. The studio continued to struggle financially. She'd started dating someone new, but it ended badly. Then another relationship that didn't last. She'd tried to reconnect with Roger at one point, but he'd moved on with someone else. I didn't take pleasure in her struggles, but I didn't feel sorry for her either. She'd made her choices, just as I'd made mine. About a year after the divorce, I was at a business networking event when I ran into Roger. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me, like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Walt," he said awkwardly. I owe you an apology." I studied him for a moment. He looked older than I remembered, tired. "You don't owe me anything," I said finally. "You weren't the one who made vows to me." Still, I knew she was married. I should have. Should have what? Been a better person? I shrugged. That ship sailed. We all make choices. You made yours, she made hers, and I made mine. He nodded, looking relieved that I wasn't going to make a scene. For what it's worth, she really messed me up too. After everything came out, she tried to make it work between us, but... He shook his head. She cheated on me too. Multiple times. I guess some people just can't help themselves. I almost laughed at the irony. Guess you got a taste of what I experienced. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm sorry for my part in that. Truly. I walked away from that conversation feeling something unexpected. Not quite closure, but a sense of completeness. The story had played out, the consequences had been distributed, and everyone involved had learned their lessons, one way or another. These days, I focus on building my business and enjoying my life. Bailey is getting older now, a little gray around the muzzle, but still happy. The apartment is quieter without Veronica, but it's also more peaceful. No more lies, no more deception, no more wondering where she really is or who she's really with. I date occasionally, but I'm careful now. Trust doesn't come as easily as it once did, and maybe that's okay. Maybe being a little more cautious, a little more observant, isn't such a bad thing. I heard recently that Veronica finally closed her studio. The financial pressures became too much, especially with that second mortgage. She's working as a photographer for someone else now, which must be a bitter pill to swallow after having her own business. Her personal life remains chaotic, from what I understand. She cycles through relationships quickly, never quite able to make anything stick. I wonder sometimes if she ever thinks about what she threw away, about the stable life we could have had if she'd just been honest and faithful. But mostly, I don't think about her at all anymore. The truth is, discovering her betrayal was the worst thing and the best thing that ever happened to me. It destroyed the life I thought I had, but it freed me from a lie I was living. It hurt more than anything I'd ever experienced, but it taught me lessons I needed to learn. Some nights, when I'm sitting on my balcony with Bailey at my feet, watching the lights of Newark spread out below, I feel genuinely content. Not the naive happiness I had before, when I believed in something that wasn't real, but a deeper, more solid satisfaction that comes from knowing exactly where you stand, with no illusions or pretenses. I built my business back up, stronger than before. I have friends who are genuine, relationships that are honest. I have a dog who loves me unconditionally. I have an apartment that's truly mine, filled with memories I'm making now rather than haunted by ones that were false. And Veronica? Last I heard, she's still searching for whatever it is she's looking for, still jumping from one relationship to another, still unable to be alone with herself long enough to figure out who she really is or what she really wants. She made her choices. She chose excitement over stability, novelty over loyalty, temporary pleasures over lasting commitment. And now she's living with the consequences of those choices. As for me, I chose differently. When I discovered the truth, I chose to walk away with my dignity intact. I chose to protect myself and my future. I chose to demand better than what I was getting. And that choice, that decision to value myself enough to leave, that was the best revenge I could have possibly taken. Not because it hurt her, though I'm sure it did, but because it saved me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying the person who wronged you. It's about building a better life without them and refusing to let their betrayal define your future. I'm doing just fine now. Better than fine, actually. And that's really all the revenge I ever needed. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.